Hi, it's Randy Burke again with Chapter 6, Managing Cleaning for Quality and Communications for Property Managers. Yeah, so happy to be back. And yeah, it's interesting how much is unwritten, so to speak, in this industry, and that when you look at, what's happening around the relationship between a service provider and their client, um, there's a lot of value exchange. Sometimes it, again, is unwritten. Specifically, often dealing with periodic work, dealing with, especially at bid time, things that might be a carryover that, is owed from one um, period to a next, possibly hours, duties that people complete. There's a lot of what I would call horse trading that happens from time to time. So it's quite interesting. So that needs to be discussed, and I think that's the point here: is that get these out ahead of time with your service provider. And certainly, when things happen in cleaning, and there's an expectation for sure, and it needs to be communicated to service providers that if there's something going on of a serious nature, you want to know about it as early as possible. And I think that needs to be made clear, particularly if it's tenants. And when you look at building relationships between your service provider and yourself, very normal and needs to happen. In fact, lunches and outings, golf, things like that. But not just for your service provider. I think it's important to stay in touch with others in the industry, other service providers, other executives of cleaning companies or even in-house operations. And I think it's important and it will serve you well in the future. And of course, business is business, and there are items that are confidential. So again, I think it's when something like that comes up, it's important to state it as such, so that there's no misunderstandings. And good clients I've always had are very open to suggestions and how things have worked for the service provider in the past, and calling it managing up, ideas. And I would suggest you'd want to be very open-minded about that. But yeah, communication, it really is a multi-layered responsibility. So, on the day-to-day basis, supervisors, even down to the cleaners level, as things cascade up to building operators on the property management side, tenant representatives, and then again, directly to senior executives and ownership of the service provider, and then same on the contractor side. The client side. So, yeah, again, spend time and let those expectations be known. And certainly, when issues come up, and they will, quality, somebody needs to own it. And on both sides, in my mind. So, principally the service provider, but communication is important with who's ever experiencing the challenge, if it's in a tenant or who knows, a regulatory body or a variety of things. So somebody, you need a point person. And staff are always, 80% of the cost, 70, 80% is people. So you're going to get complexities, language, turnover, issues that happened, my goodness, human rights complaints, you name it. And on both sides. So again, this is about looking around the corner, being communicative with what has occurred or might occur, and what solutions look like. Earlier is always better. Certainly with the tenants and the building users and the guys that are paying the freight. They definitely, anything that's going on there needs to be communicated quickly with an action plan put in place. And part of service, certainly on the contractor side, is visibility. And we'll talk a little bit more about tours, but I think if something's happening, being up front of the issue is certainly important, even if things are great. Champion the service. But if you've got a new service relationship, the pre-startup meeting is critical. I've spoken about this at detail in other recordings, but absolutely, the service provider really does need to step up with communication and how they would hope the relationship would run. But again, on the property management side or facility management side, make sure you state what you need and get creative. Ask and ye shall receive, as they say. And in buildings, there's always high needs situations or even people. So let's get upfront about that. What are the expectations for certain tenants or certain areas of the building, so we don't wait till the same old issues come back. And KPIs are really important. I don't care how big or small the building is. You can have them very minimal. But yeah, discuss that. What are your expectations? What's the program look like? And how's the reporting going to happen? And I always recommend one point of contact initially on each level. The building day-to-day level, one level up of the building property management, I would say, plus the supervisor, and then at least one more level up, with ownership of the service provider and executives. So when you talk about quality control and understanding, certainly it is the service provider's responsibility. Again, as I spoke, make sure you communicate your expectations and what level. I mean, daily clean things happen. Who needs to be alerted on, something was missed or broken or stolen or all those other things. And so I think a minimum beyond that is a monthly quality control and inspection report. And then from there, depending on the size of the project, a joint customer review session where everything's discussed, what went on in the past, what's happening now and what we can expect in the future. And maybe it's quarterly, often it's twice a year, small contracts maybe even once a year. But problems and issues can escalate pretty quickly if they're not dealt with, and sometimes they just escalate right away depending on the severity. So you need to have that tiered response, individuals who can respond to that. And there's lots of programs and tools out there, but essentially you should map that out ahead of time, on the client side and on the service provider side. What are those tools? How are they going to be used? What the updates look like? And all of those issues. So when you look at, often there's extra services, particularly in property management, that are paid for by tenants. Sometimes this can get tricky and complicated. So I think it's incumbent on both parties to make sure that they understand getting approval. First of all, is this okay for this particular type of service? Be it computer cleaning, dishwashing, extra staff in the daytime, lots of things. So should be nothing sort of hidden here. And reporting, maybe not. It depends on the policy, typically of the building operator's company. But yeah, I think when bid time comes, it's important to have some kind of sharing on what those extras are. Most contracts are bid pretty tight on the day-to-day profit, and contractors in particular count on these extras. So if you get an idea of the overall volume, I think that's fair. And occasionally, if there's something really major being provided to the tenants, contractors may be able to revenue share some of the margin from that work. And then the question is property facility management allowing service providers to advertise for their services? And typically there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the short overview of communication and with your service provider. And of course, here's our team. Love to have discussions, ask questions, reach out to us. And thanks so much. And here's our next, what we've done so far, chapter 1 to 5. And this was 6. Jump onto the YouTube and subscribe. Take care.